What is up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to episode 7 of Faux Football. This is the very real podcast about everyone's favorite fake sport, fantasy football. I'm your host, Chu. You can follow me on Twitter at Father Dynasty, and check out my website, fatherdynasty.com, where you can find the Substack, this podcast, a link to my rankings, and of course, with the Substack, if you were to enjoy this on Substack, the podcast is within that as well. It gives you the links to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that kind of stuff. Missed last week, ran a half marathon, and the only thing I was thinking the entire time was I wanted to not talk about the half marathon because I would just remember from the league when every time someone would say marathon, they would just say what. So yeah, that is done and gone, first one and last one, but I am back. We are getting ready for week 7. Ooh, almost said 6. I was one behind. And so we've got bye week hell, we've got flex and bust out, and we've got this or that. So without further ado, let's get into bye week hell.
Bye week hell, by the way. I didn't even mention that.
So bye week hell, this is week 7 and only 2 teams on a bye. We've got the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills. And just a quick note before we get into this, I'll be kind of highlighting each of the players, the notable players that are going to be on a bye, and 2 players that in my Yahoo 10 teams start 8 league are currently available on free agency in case you need to plug somebody in. But next week, week 8, that is Bye-mageddon, if you will. And that is actually the 1 week that has the most teams on a bye. That is going to be 6 teams. So it's the Cardinals, Lions, Jaguars, Raiders, Rams, and Seahawks. And actually from that point on, it's 6, and then it's 4 and 4 after that. So this will be an interesting stretch to see how people drafted, who's injured, which backups are stepping up, and this could kind of shift the tide, I think, in some leagues, depending on how you drafted. But getting to it, so for the quarterbacks that we are without this week, Lamar Jackson, we've actually been without him for a number of weeks, but he should be back after the bye, from what we understand. And Josh Allen, who, of course, has been playing tremendously well. Another team lost a couple of games there, but he's still been doing well for fantasy's sake. And 2 players that I think are worthwhile to pick up from waiver wires that are available in my Yahoo league. And one is Jordan Love going up against the Arizona Cardinals, and then Spencer Rattler going up against the Chicago Bears. So both of these guys, pretty solid matchups, I would say. Jordan Love, he's steadily getting more and more weapons back. So he's got Matthew Golden getting a little more seasoned. Christian Watson getting closer and closer to a return. I don't know that he's coming back this week, but he is getting closer and closer from prior season ACL tear. And I think there might have been a little more with that. And Spencer Rattler, he's done well. I mean, he earned this job from going into the beginning of this season. And I'm not saying it's been tremendous or that the team is atop the NFC South. They aren't. They're at the bottom of it. But really, given what he's got, what the team looks like for the Saints, he's doing a decent job. I think he's learned from the lumps that he took last season from a couple of his starts and a couple of his snaps that he had. And I think he's doing better. Is he the future in New Orleans? I don't necessarily know that, but considering what they're dealing with their salaries and all that kind of stuff, they need to kind of reset and recalibrate. So I think they're in as good of a spot as they possibly can be. So going into the running backs that we'll be without for week 7, Derrick Henry and James Cook. Derrick Henry, much like Lamar Jackson, Henry's actually been healthy, but just someone that you are hesitant to start as only having one really notable traditional Derrick Henry week thus far this season. Yeah, the offense has certainly not looked the same without Lamar Jackson. That is for certain. And also the defense has been absolutely atrocious. So again, the hope would be Lamar Jackson returning helps kind of change the game and the dynamic for Derrick Henry. I think a lot of people see him as a bye and someone who you should be trying to snag on his bye week if you can. I think he could have a good latter half of the season push. James Cook having a tremendous season, and I don't see any reason why that would be changing. But as we look for some replacements for these guys this week, so we've got Tyjae Spears, Titans running back, and they're going up against the Patriots, and Jerome Ford, we'll say second string. I think Dylan Sampson still for some reason has been relegated to the RB3 at this point, and they're going up against the Miami Dolphins. So Spears, not so much for the matchup. It's not a tremendous matchup for him, But him coming back from injury, they are involving him a little bit and a little bit more. I think this will be the third game back since his injury. And again, this is Tony Pollard's backfield, make no bones about it. They continue to talk about wanting to get him more involved. And, they with the recent firing of the coach, I don't know, there's a bit of unpredictability of what the usage is going to look like. But they've talked about liking this guy, and it would be weird to think they don't continue to at least get him somewhat involved. And at this point, you're looking for people that are available on the waiver wire. Then, unfortunately, it's Tyjae Spears. And Jerome Ford, I think this is a tremendous look for Quinshon Judkins going up against the hapless Miami Dolphins defense. And Jerome Ford, for whatever reason, again, not a terrible player by any means, but I know he took a pay cut to stay there. They drafted Dylan Sampson, Quinshon Judkins. Sampson was great in the first week or two, while Judkins was not quite with the team in a traditional sense. But Sampson taking a tremendous backseat. Judkins, they've just been force feeding him the ball. But Jerome Ford's a bit of a do-it-all guy. They trust him, and I think he's just going to continue to get opportunities. And certainly, if this game gets away from Miami, which it may or may not, Jerome Ford will regardless be involved. So going over to the wide receivers, not too many notable ones, just considering how these offenses have been. I've really just got Zay Flowers and Khalil Shakir. So of course Zay Flowers for the Baltimore Ravens. I think, again, for the Ravens, they're really looking for Lamar to come back and really invigorate and have a spark in this offense. Shakir, he's the most notable one for the Bills. But, they do have the other guys. They do have Keon Coleman. But it's really just a mixed bag of what they're getting. Everyone has their roles, and that's just kind of how that offense plays. Zay Flowers has been very up and down, so I think you're not missing too much from these receivers. And I would say some pretty exciting options to pick up. I think probably in other leagues these guys may have already been picked up. Again, this is a shallower Yahoo league that I'm in. So one is Jordan Whittington going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And another one is Luther Burden going up against the whoever the Bears are going up after. I guess it would be the Saints, because I already said that one, didn't I? So I think these are interesting because you've got two different situations going on. Jordan Whittington, he's someone who I had as a dynasty buy in the offseason. Of course, Puka was already there. Devontae Adams has already been re-signed, but Whittington had shown in the preseason, I guess now it would be 2 preseasons, a little bit of what he can do. Cooper Kupp is gone, but the offense is still humming and going perfectly fine without Cooper Kupp and with the addition of Devontae Adams, and of course Kyren Williams playing tremendously well. But Jordan Whittington, with Puka out, as he will be out, Whittington is the closest thing they have to Puka. Again, the physicality is not quite there in terms of just the size and what he does, but again, he does a lot of good things that I think the coaching staff has talked and spoken highly of him whenever he is involved. Going up against a Jacksonville defense that is pretty solid, especially that defensive front. But Matthew Stafford's been spinning it. The offense has been doing tremendously well, and I think Jordan Whittington will have a pretty strong PPR day. Luther Burden, DJ Moore was held back, I think, at the hospital the last game and didn't initially travel, leave with the team there. I'm not sure if he's going to play or not, but even if he's trending towards playing, I do still think Luther Burden is a worthwhile add, and maybe toss him in the flex. You don't feel great about it, but his role has grown little by little throughout the season. He is still a rookie, of course, and there is still some unpredictability with, we know Caleb Williams likes to throw to Rome Odunze. Otherwise, it can be a bit of a question mark. But I think Luther Burden is showing that his role is going to grow, and I think his skill set is intriguing. And certainly if you have Rome Odunze and may or may not have DJ Moore, Luther Burden does kind of have an interesting skill set that kind of can complement what they do well. And I think as Luther Burden's growing as a receiver, his upside can continue to grow as well. And last but not least, we've got the tight ends, and that would be Mark Andrews, and we'll throw Isaiah Likely in there as well, and Dalton Kincaid. And for Mark Andrews, it's been an up-and-down season. Again, a little bit of it has been quarterback play. A little bit has also just been the volatility that is Mark Andrews and his touchdown upside or downside, however you want to look at that. And Dalton Kincaid has been really having a very efficient, tremendous season. Usage-wise, he's getting about half the snaps from the tight end position, but has been doing a lot with them. And while that is worthwhile, I tend to get a bit nervous, certainly from the tight end position, if it's someone that is having that kind of a snap share, again, a sub 60%, floating around 50% snap share, and everything is going really well. But if it tends not to, there's just less opportunities for him to be involved. But thus far, he's been tremendously involved. Top 10, top 12 tight end in a very good offense, but one that you're not terrified of the other receiving options. So I think you kind of hope there's a bit of security with Dalton Kincaid, but we'll see. And the fill-ins that we have for these two guys. So this week we've got Cade Otton going up against the Detroit Lions and Kyle Pitts going up against the San Francisco 49ers. So again, Cade Otton, both of these are kind of just with opportunities. So Cade Otton stepping in we've got an injured Emeka Egbuka. Chris Godwin, I believe, is out. Mike Evans might be back. And we've had as I really appreciated the announcer that called this out last week, the duo of Johnson and Johnson. These are the two guys that had filled in as more and more people just continued to get injured last week. And yes, Tez Johnson, the one that thought they were chanting MVP for him after he scored a touchdown, not realizing that was actually for Baker Mayfield. But I think Cade Otton, you saw this last season and saw it a little bit last game, but I think he only got 5 or 6 targets. But he's always on the field. He's that every down more or less tight end for the Buccaneers, and I know he's not a tremendous high upside receiving threat, but he's beyond capable. And it's more just, I think, his usage and what they need him to do. But I really do think that Cade Otton has an intriguing upside week this week going up against the Lions in what could turn into a bit of a shootout. And Kyle Pitts, for the San Francisco 49ers, of course, they've already been dealing with the loss of Nick Bosa for the season, and this will be the first full game that the 49ers are dealing with the loss of what I think is the best linebacker in the league in Fred Warner. And I think for a massive, uber-athletic tight end like Kyle Pitts, that could be intriguing as they will continue to hyper-target Drake London. I have no doubt about that. Bijan Robinson will continue to have a tremendously big role both from the backfield and as a receiver. But I do think Kyle Pitts has had steady usage, and I do think this is intriguing upside going up against the 49ers. So that will do it for bye week hell for week 7. And again, want to note, look out for week 8 and those 9 and 10, because combined that'll be 14 teams going on by it. So look out for that. But let's get into flex and bust out.
I'm going to flex and bust out of here.
So flex and bust out, I am looking at 3 running backs and 3 receivers that are respectively, they are outside of the top 36 in consensus rankings for Fantasy Pros. And these are guys that I'm thinking are going to be finishing inside of the top 36. People that, likely it's the running back and wide receiver that we're plugging into our flex spots. So that's kind of where the lens I'm kind of looking at this through. So last week was not a good one for running back. So my misses were Kendre Miller, Brashard Smith, and Emmanuel Wilson. But feeling good about these. Next one's coming up, and one of these guys I believe already spoken about. So week 7, we've got R.J. Harvey, RB38, going up against the New York Giants. So he's been the clear second fiddle to J.K. Dobbins, but I do feel optimistic in what is a pretty juicy matchup going up against the Giants. There's continued to be talk, optimistic, coach speak, if you will, about R.J. Harvey and getting him more involved. It's funny when they say that and then they just don't do it. It's like, well, you're the one that would actually decide that, so what is happening here? But again, it's not a slight to Dobbins. Dobbins is doing tremendously well, but I think it would behoove them to, involve R.J. Harvey a little bit more. And, I do think he has that good home run ability and could be worthwhile against a Giants offense that is really surging and kind of coming into their own. Next up, Jeremy McNichols, running back for the Washington Commanders, RB45 on the week, going up against the Dallas Cowboys. And far be it from me to not recommend someone that's going up against Dallas Cowboys defense as a great option. And could very well, despite the atrocity that is the Cowboys defense, that offense is humming. And CeeDee Lamb should be playing this week. Again, Jake Ferguson has filled in admirably. George Pickens has filled in admirably. Javonte Williams, of course, has had his role. But again, this offense taking it even another step up. I think McNichols, who is the far and away the best pass catcher of that backfield, certainly with Austin Eckler out now for the rest of the season, I expect McNichols to be involved at least in that passing down role. And again, if this game is getting a little out of hand and they're needing to kind of play catch up, I do think McNichols will be a PPR monster. Last but not least, Jerome Ford. Of course, I spoke about him in the previous segment. RB51 on the week, going up against the Dolphins. Similar to the Cowboys, again, who am I to say don't start a running back that's going up against the Dolphins? And I do think it'll be a bit of ball control there, going up against a pretty hapless Dolphins team, and one that is falling apart, and I mean, maybe in the works of trading away some players. And Jerome Ford, I think, as this game kind of gets away, possibly from the Dolphins, Jerome Ford will hopefully get some more touches and possibly have some touchdown upside, or just have a good blend of yardage and getting a couple of targets where, from a PPR perspective, it'll get him inside of the top 36. And going over to the 3 receivers, so last week we hit on one of them, so I was hitting on Matthew Golden, had a tremendous week, and just missed on Rashid Shaheed and Ryan Flournoy. But that's all right, because we're going to hit on, I feel good about one of these really well. The other two I'm not too sure. So first, Alec Ayomanor, he is wide receiver 41 on the week for the Titans, and going up against the Patriots. Like the matchup, again, the Patriots are no slouches on defense necessarily, but a hobbled Calvin Ridley, not sure if he's out at this point or not, but Ayomanor has been doing well even in Ridley's shadow, so to speak, as Ridley has been underperforming for most of this season. But a new coach, or interim coach, if you will, there's a lot of that excitement, and like, what are they going to do to kind of shake things up and kind of simplify everything so that the team can kind of get back on track. I don't think it's going to equate to a win against the surging Patriots at this point, but I think they're going to need to put points on the board. I think, hopefully Cam Ward, as he's grown comfortable with throwing to Ayomanor, hopefully he can have that touchdown upside and maybe get that this week. And next up, another one who I've spoken about a little bit, wide receiver 42 on the week, and that is Tez Johnson. He's going up against the Detroit Lions. Like the matchup, the Lions DBs are very hurt, bones like glass, and I'm not sure of the ones that they're going to be getting back this week. But despite not actually being the MVP last game, as it was, of course, Baker Mayfield, like I said, he may or may not have that touchdown upside. Again, that was a very good play by him. It's weird to see players, certainly receivers like a Tez Johnson or a Tank Dell, that are basically my size and are able to produce in the NFL. Again, it's just a weird thing to try and understand and visualize. But with everybody hurt, again, I mentioned Cade Otton's upside. Tez Johnson, I think, is very intriguing. And again, we'll get that duo of Johnson and Johnson. So I think somebody's got to feast, because Baker Mayfield has been playing out of his mind, and it doesn't matter who you put at receiver, it's going to get done. And the third one that we've got, Jordan Whittington. Of course, I mentioned him as well, wide receiver 45 on the week, going up against the Jaguars. Not a tremendous matchup that is advantageous for Whittington, but again, no Puka, and there is a comfort there already with Matthew Stafford. So Jordan Whittington, hopefully, and the one I'm most optimistic about, sliding into the top 36. So that will do it for Flex and Bust Out, and let's get into a little bit of this or that.
No this or that.
So this or that, looking at two somewhat closely ranked players for Week 7 in the Fantasy Pros consensus ranks, and I'm kind of applying my own rankings that I have, and picking some ones that might be a bit interesting or maybe a bit kind of against the grain, even if it's a spot or two, just some notable players to talk about. So for quarterback, we've got Drake May going up against the Tennessee Titans, and I've got him outperforming Dak Prescott going up against the Washington Commanders. And this really is more of a hot takey one, not because Drake May has been doing poorly. He's not. He's been doing tremendously well. Certainly from a fantasy perspective, both as a passer, as a scorer, and again on the ground as well. But Dak Prescott, not to be outdone, has been doing tremendously well also, and he has a tremendous matchup against the Commanders. I think his output's going to be tremendous, but they have shown a proclivity to really establishing that rushing offense there. And I do think that May, what he can do with his legs, I think is going to provide him that upside against a Titans defense that will be trying all they can to help support their interim head coach. But again, it will be the Patriots that are going to be winning that one. Next up, another guy we talked about already. I've got Spencer Rattler going up against the Chicago Bears, and I've got him doing better this week than Trevor Lawrence going up against the LA Rams. So both of them, fairly comparable matchups. The Rams secondary is nothing to write home about at this point. But Lawrence has really been up and down. Again, I know more recently has done pretty well. Rattler, again, like I mentioned before, has I think exceeded many people's expectations, not in a tremendous fashion, but again, has done pretty well. And Trevor Lawrence, he's so spotty, and it's weird to say that I trust the consistency, if you want to call it that, of Spencer Rattler and the upside going up against the Bears defense than I do Trevor Lawrence going up against the Rams defense, who does have a notable pass rush and some weapons there. So yeah, going with Rattler on this one. And running back wise, we've got Quinshon Judkins going up against the Dolphins, and we've got Javonte Williams, as I mentioned with Dak, going up against the Washington Commanders. So another one, certainly more hyped for Dak's matchup with the Commanders than I am Javonte Williams going up against the Commanders. Again, still a decent matchup, but certainly more excited for the passing piece of that. Quinshon Judkins, of course, psyched for running back going up against the Dolphins. It's going to be his get-right game. I know last week didn't go quite as he had planned, as it got away from them a little bit, but I don't think game script is going to be a problem going up against the Dolphins. So again, I have Quinshon Judkins as a top 10 option, and actually both of them at top 10 option, but I have Judkins just one spot ahead of Javonte Williams for Week 7. And another one I'm excited about, I got Kyren Williams going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. As you can tell, I pick a lot of the same matchups. And I have him over and outscoring Saquon Barkley going up against the Minnesota Vikings. So again, Minnesota, a defense that has generally struck fear into most people. Certainly if it's a rookie or inexperienced quarterback. That's not what you have in Jalen Hurts. But Saquon has not had the year anywhere certainly close to last year. And Kyren Williams, for all that we talk about, Blake Corum, he's going to overtake him. We want this to be a 75-25 split or whatever kind of numbers that McVay's thrown out there. Kyren Williams is the guy. They paid him. They paid him for a reason. It's very clear. Going up against the Jaguars, again, I think they have a better chance with the rushing attack than the passing attack. Part of that is because, of course, no Puka, but they're going to pass the ball. It's a McVay offense. That's what's going to happen. But they're going to put Kyren Williams in the right opportunities to have that scoring upside, and I am going Kyren Williams outscoring Saquon Barkley. And receivers going for Week 7, so I've got Rashee Rice going up against the Las Vegas Raiders, and Justin Jefferson going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. So I've got Rice taking Jefferson in this one. Still not 100% sure which quarterback's actually going to be under center for Minnesota, and I'd be more afraid of picking Rice in this one if it was actually Wentz, but I know Wentz was battling an injury, so I sincerely don't know who's going to be the guy there. But either way, I like Rice coming back. Again, for all intents and purposes, we understand him to be entirely healthy. He's been practicing, and we know they have that connection. I know Worthy's healthy. You got Juju, you got Hollywood Brown, Travis Kelce. He's getting his sea legs, and I think Rice is going to pick up where he left off. I think they have a very creative offense there in Kansas City. They're hitting their stride. I think Rice is going to really have a boom game, certainly more than Justin Jefferson in Week 7. And the next one, we got Romeo Doubs going up against the Arizona Cardinals and Michael Pittman going up against the LA Chargers. Michael Pittman's my guy. I think he's someone who, again, glad he's finally got a solid quarterback to be playing with, and I think we've gotten to see that production finally. That we've all been waiting for. And Romeo Doubs, I know he has his, I think it was a 3-touchdown game a couple weeks ago. Not saying that's going to happen, but I think what we've seen from his target share has been pretty impressive. And before it really gets derailed from throwing in Christian Watson, eventually Jaden Reed comes back at some point. But I think Doubs is probably one of the best options that they have at receiver. And while my most favorite pass catcher in Green Bay is actually Tucker Kraft, if I'm going to go receiver and go pick a bit of an interesting option, I'm going to go Romeo Doubs to outscore Michael Pittman in Week 7. And the final position for this one, we've got tight end. I've got Mason Taylor going up against the Carolina Panthers, and then I've got Darren Waller going up against the Cleveland Browns. Well, let me just say, the rule that I have this season, especially, play the tight end going up against the Carolina Panthers. One of the worst, arguable is probably not even the right word. They have the worst linebacking core in the NFL. And Mason Taylor, this is just the perfect combination. Mason Taylor is ascending as a tight end in his rookie season. He already has a 9-target, then 12-target game. Of course, that got derailed a little bit last week by playing against the Broncos, a very tremendous defense, in a very low-scoring game. Not very exciting for the people over in London watching, but he's going to get back on track. There's no Garrett Wilson. No offense to Josh Reynolds and company, but I think that Mason Taylor should see double-digit targets and be heavily involved, and I do think that it could be not a tremendously high-scoring affair, but I'm optimistic for Mason Taylor to get a touchdown this week and some yardage as well. Darren Waller, not a tremendous slight to him, really. Certainly a tougher matchup going up against the Browns. And, for how he shot out of a cannon entering this season once he finally was healthy and everything, a tremendous red zone threat and all. But I really think this is the Mason Taylor matchup going up against the Panthers, and you couldn't ask for more. And the final one that I've got for the week, got Kyle Pitts going up against the 49ers, outperforming Cade Otton against the Lions. And matchups, again, are fairly similar. But again, I really like the recency of the 49ers now being without Fred Warner, really wanting to see what that defense is going to look like. I think when we consider what matchups are and how they've been doing this season for defenses, I really think that impact of no Fred Warner is going to, for as good of a organization on the offensive and the defensive side as San Fran is, I think having to account for no Fred Warner is going to be really tough. And again, having a Kyle Pitts who is having a steady season, a very good season, I think is an opportunity to have, could be his best week. Again, even if it's his second best week, that should still be able to have him outperform Cade Otton, but definitely an intriguing one. Well, that does it for this week's episode. Check out the Substack, Faux Football. Check out the podcast, which you're listening to, Faux Football, and that will be on the Substack if you want to listen through there. And or you can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube as well. And go check out the website where you can find both of those things, and there is a link to the rankings that I do. I do weekly rankings, of course, for redraft, updated all the way up until Sunday for like the 1 o'clock games. And I've got, of course, Dynasty rankings that are not updated as frequently. I don't want to kind of have, just be too reactionary to what is ultimately a Dynasty long-term type of look. And yeah, subscribe to everything. So whether it's the Substack, subscribe to that, or of course, if it's the podcast listening, please follow me there and like and share whatever you can. Hit me on Twitter at Father Dynasty. Let me know what you love and, more importantly, what you hate about the episode and what you'd like to hear going forward. But yeah, have a happy and healthy week 7.